Arc 7 Chapter 29, How Each of Us Stands. The victory condition for reclaiming the throne. Securing the 9 divine generals. Subaru felt the air in the conference hall become tense as the victory condition and the names and 2 names of the 9 divine generals needed for the victory were revealed. Of course, the names of the 9 divine generals, which would be familiar to people in the Empire, were all new to Subaru. If this were a manga or an anime, it would have been an exciting development to see all the names of the executives revealed at once. When it comes to me, it's not something I can let go of and be happy about. Abel's description of the 9 divine generals and their 2 names were all bluffs, but they were enough to make me imagine how troublesome each one of them would be. As Arikia's name was Spirit Eater, which was a characteristic of hers, I could imagine that the others' names were related to their abilities or fighting methods. Subaru, the only ones whose names I can imagine what kind of person they are: a spellcaster and flying dragon general. The 2 names I pointed out were probably both aliases from the way he fought and the tools he used. The other 2 names were probably inspired by their appearance or anecdotes of their exploits. In China's Romance of the 3 Kingdoms and Suikoden, characters often take on 2 names for this reason. If you think about it, those stories were also about the theft of the country. Unfortunately, Subaru is not very familiar with them, having only a cursory knowledge of their outline. Subaru, this is no time to be escaping reality. Well, I've heard that securing the 9 divine generals is a condition for victory, but there are some things I want to ask you. Abel, what is it? Is there any room for doubt? Abel raised one eyebrow as he recovered from his initial shock and placed his hand on the map on the table. If he thinks he's explained everything, he's missing the point of a smart guy compared to the other people here, Zykel and the others, not to mention the Shudra people. Subaru has far less information about the Volca Empire. Subaru, so there's room for doubt. If you keep skipping explanations because you know what you're talking about, people around you will think you're a guy who doesn't know what he's thinking. Abel, I'll take that as advice and ignore it. State your question. Subaru, keep that to yourself, instead of letting it go unheard. Subaru sighs as Abel crosses his arms and responds arrogantly. Then, resigning himself to the gathering attention around him, he said, ready? He held up 4 and 5 fingers on each hand. Subaru, 9 divine generals, but thankfully they're divided in odd numbers, so it's easy to see that it's a battle of numbers. But our favored opponent is unaccounted for, and Arikia and this Chisha guy are definite enemies. We're already way outnumbered. We're supposed to have at least 5 people, but they already have 2 of the 9 divine generals. In addition, the person who helped Abel, Guz, is not known to be alive or dead, so there is a high possibility that he may have lost his cards that he can take for sure. Subaru, that makes it all the more unflattering. It's good that the victory condition is clear, but is it actually realistic to seduce the 9 divine generals? Al, hey, brother, you're really taking the Emperor for granted. I said that earlier, but he's already won the Emperor election ceremony. You can't just go and talk to him and expect to be turned away. As long as you don't get kicked out of the broken bar Priscilla, you will have the same opportunity to cut off the heads of those who disobey you. Subaru, get them on our side. Al's attempt to dissolve Subaru's doubts was burned away by his master's extreme comments. They were talking about how to get the 9 divine generals on our side, but devising a way to kill the 9 divine generals who won't be on their side is not the way to go. Subaru, but the clown in the iron helmet hit the nail on the head. In fact, if I wanted to meet him, no general would refuse to do so. The problem is what happens after we meet. Al, is the clown in the iron helmet me? Subaru, there's no one else with an iron helmet. If you have a problem with me being treated like a clown, you can start by petitioning Priscilla first. Shutting Al up, Subaru returned to the topic at hand. In the first place, Subaru, I don't understand the system of the 9 divine generals. I've always imagined them as 9 generals who report directly to the Emperor, but doesn't that mean they're all in the imperial capital? Priscilla, a general is the cornerstone of a nation. Look at the vastness of the Empire. Even though the imperial capital is in the center of the country, how can they move quickly in an emergency if they are all in the imperial capital? Zykel, yes, although it has been dramatically reduced during your reign, there is still no end to the fires of civil unrest that smolder in the Empire. The protection of the Empire is not as solid if the imperial capital is protected. Subaru : In other words, the 9 divine generals in question are also scattered all over the imperial capital. Priscilla and Zykel added, and Subaru put his hand on his chin and agreed. Following a familiar example, Russell was also given the exaggerated title of Western Margrave in the Kingdom of Lunica, and was obligated to work quickly in the kingdom's time of need. Of course, he has permission to set up a private army in his territory for that purpose. However, in Russell's case, it seems that individual strength is stronger than a poorly organized army. Just by raining down fireballs while flying in the sky, most opponents would be able to be completely defeated. Subaru, when you think about it, that guy is also quite a cheat unit. I'm a little curious to see where he stands compared to the 9 divine generals. Kana, I don't know, but I think we're getting off track here. Natsumi, Subaru, my bad. Anyway, I know that the 9 divine generals are scattered all over the country. If that's the case, am I correct in understanding that not all of them were involved in the coup in the imperial capital? Abel, from what I've seen, and from a practical standpoint, I'd say so. Abel nods his head to Subaru, who confirms. To be honest, he wasn't sure about Abel's assessment, as he has just been found to be quite unpopular, but the fact that no one around him has pointed it out suggests that it's a topic that can be accepted for the time being. Anyway, the good news is that not all of the 9 divine generals have turned against each other. It makes sense that the more of the 9 divine generals they secured, the more likely they were to win this battle. On top of that, if there was one thing that Subaru had doubts about, it was Subaru. Sorry for asking so many questions, but I have an additional question. If the order of the 9 divine generals is simply in order of strength, then priority should be given to the ones with the highest order, right? Abel: yeah, that perception is correct. Subaru: then it's enough to be lined up with Reinhardt and Cecilus, right? It's a fixed point to go for that person, or isn't that how it's decided? The 4 strongest people in the human race who have made a name for themselves in the 4 major countries. If Cecilus, who was mentioned, is a person who is considered to be on par with Reinhardt, it is as if the outcome of the battle was decided by that person alone. In fact, Subaru had an uncommon expectation and view that Reinhardt could win even if he fought everyone in the kingdom. So, naturally, he had such expectations for Cecilus, who was of the same rank as him. But Abel: it's true that if we secure their thing, the problem of our strength will be solved at once. Subaru: instead of that, why do you look so bitter? Frowning, Abel's expression was not excellent as he answered Subaru's question. Subaru's expectations did not seem to have been disappointed, but at the same time, his expression was not without melancholy. Abel reveals the reason for this with a small exhale. Abel: the reason why securing the 9 divine generals is a condition for victory is because many generals will follow their military orders. The more 9 divine generals you have under your banner, the more generals will join your forces. Do you understand? Subaru: yes, I understand. That's why you're saying we should have the strongest guy on our side. Or is it that the strongest in the empire is not true to his name? Abel: no, there's no doubt that he's the strongest in the empire. However, there is a problem. Subaru: a problem? Abel: he's not very popular. Subaru stopped thinking for a while at the words that were uttered in pent-up frustration. He wondered what the problem was, and the words he was told slowly penetrated his brain. Lack of popularity. The information was digested correctly. Subaru: is that what you're saying? Abel: it's true. He is the first general of the empire, but he has no authority. Even if I were to give him the power, he could do nothing. The only thing he can do is cut people down. Subaru: you can't put someone like that in the position of general. Al: easy, brother. That's the way of the empire, you know. Abel's comment about Cecilus was met with a choking hold by Al. With one arm around Subaru, Al tilted his head to look at Abel and said, Al, in fact, you've given him nothing but the title AI1. Try giving him the authority he deserves. Maybe he's been taken advantage of by someone who's in a good mood. Abel: of course, I don't want that thing to be used by anyone other than me. If there was such a danger, I would have gotten rid of it earlier. Subaru: but you were in the forest, alone and helpless. Even if he says that he was holding the reins, he was only talking big when reality is different. In the first place, was it okay to accept the story that the person who is even called the strongest in the empire is unable to gather popularity in the Volca Empire, which is dedicated to this strength? Subaru: what about that part? Zykel-san. Me? Huh? Subaru: yes. As a general of the empire, I would like to hear your honest opinion. What do you think of the first general, Cecilus? When the water is turned on him, Zirkel says, well, and crosses his arms briefly in thought. Then he nodded several times at the expectant look in Subaru's eyes. Zykel: first of all, there is no doubt that Cecilus Dono is the cornerstone of our national defense and the symbol of the strength of the Volcan Empire. The empire's people are also the embodiment of its strength and its way of being. Subaru: oh, isn't it in good shape? So what? Zykel: he's humanly uninhibited, friendly, and has a sunny and pleasant demeanor that never changes to anyone. Overall. Subaru: overall. Zykel: many generals fear Lord Cecilus to be an incomprehensible monster and impossible to communicate with on a deeper level. I believe His Excellency is correct in his assessment. Subaru: your assessment has taken a sharp turn, hasn't it? Zykel, who had only shown the face of a good person up to this point, chose his words quite carefully in his assessment. Some people think that he was just trying to be considerate of Abel, the emperor, but the wrinkles between his eyebrows show that he was struggling with a lot of things, so he probably told the truth. In other words, Priscilla, I'm not going to allow you to be so cavalier as to try to seize the AI of the 9 divine generals and tip the scales in one fell swoop. Even if you twist your head like a clown, you won't be able to come up with a good AI too. Subaru: shut up. Don't blame me for his lack of popularity. If the emperor and the generals aren't popular, it's no wonder a coup d'etat was called. Abel, how many times have you repeated this? Don't think that your disrespect will be overlooked forever. Getting sharp glares from Priscilla and Abel respectively. Subaru stuck out his tongue at them. However, it's true that the plan has been shattered. If securing the 9 divine generals is equal to securing the number of forces, then there is no merit in rushing to secure 9 divine generals who are not popular. Subaru: in fact, if they are not popular, you can even leave them alone. Abel: that's also a problem. That thing has the ability to change the course of the war all by itself, if necessary. Even if you can hold all of the remaining 9 generals, there is a good chance that he alone can take this head. Subaru: he's so hard to handle. He's a huge hindrance. There's little merit in rushing to secure him, but he's too dangerous a bomb to leave unattended. It is only now, in a foreign land far away from home, that he was reminded of how much of a good asset Reinhardt is, whose abilities and humanity are guaranteed. Perhaps if called out loud, will he not rush to the neighboring country? Abel, let me tell you something, fool. If you're the A-Sword Saint, you can't cross the border because of the agreement between nations. It would be wise not to get your hopes up. Subaru: don't read people's minds. I'm not trying to be serious. Relying on them only when you're in trouble is not a good attitude to have in a friend. It's not a friendship if you use it for convenience, just because you can call on it and it will come running. If the situation became really really bad. He might not be able to say so, but until that moment came, Subaru was ready to keep his sense of ethics. Priscilla, so, have you run out of questions, you ordinary fool who is being treated as Abel's military strategist? Subaru, I'm not exhausted, and I'm not a military strategist, but the first part I said broken bar, Subaru replied, frowning as Priscilla rubbed him the wrong way about his position. Then, just as he was about to move on to the next topic of the meeting, Miss Natsumi and Village Chief Kun, excuse me, at the same time, the door was opened with a loud voice, and a new person appeared in the conference hall. The one who arrived was Flop, a beautiful man dressed in blue with long golden hair swaying briskly. Flop was supposed to be tending to the injured on the upper floor where the claw marks of Eric's rampage remained. He looked at Subaru and Abel, drawing all eyes in the room, and nodded. You are. Flop's figure was stained with blood everywhere, accentuating the horror of the field hospital-like treatment site. But the fact that he showed up here means that Subaru, Flop-san, how are you treating everyone? Flop, we're just about done. You're in the mood for husband Kun, not Miss Natsumi? If so, I'll revert to calling you husband Kun. Subaru, either way, but yeah, one step down. While receiving Flop's rather oblique words of consideration, Subaru bit down on his relief and anxiety at the same time when he heard that the healing process had come to an end. The relief was simply that the rescue of the injured was over. The anxiety is that he would hear the results of that rescue. The goal of a bloodless capitulation had already failed. 7 guards had been sacrificed when Arikia was taken out. The only question now was whether any of the wounded would join them. Flop, there have been no deaths. Husband Kun. Subaru, yeah, Flop, we've all been in a very difficult situation, though, but I think it was thanks to the efforts of your wife and niece, and the agility of Miss Talitha and Miss Utakata. Of course, my sister and I had to work hard, too. Reading his inner feelings from Subaru's complexion, Flop gave him the answer first. Flop answers innocently, pointing to himself and proudly talking about his contribution. The answer he gave was concise, and Subaru needed a beat to digest the information. However, after one beat later and a deeper understanding, a great big sigh escaped him. Subaru, no dead people. Flop, yeah, it's also a sign that everyone did their best to stay alive. As for me, if it wasn't for my sister protecting me, I would have hit my head and died. Haha, I owe my sister so much. Subaru, yeah, that's true. I can't thank you enough, Medium-san. Flop laughed vivaciously, and in front of him, Subaru turned over and shook his shoulders. If Medium, or anyone else for that matter, hadn't been there, this report would never have been heard. There are lives that were lost, but there are also lives that were not lost. The emotions it brought to his heart were great. Abel, merchant, what happened to the healer? Abel interrupted the conversation in an indifferent tone, leaving Subaru's emotions out of it. Subaru raised an eyebrow at the unfamiliar sound of healer, and Flop put his finger to his lips. Healers, and thought about it. Flop, are you talking about husband Kun's wife? Then, Abel, who else is there? Do you think there was anyone else in that place who could use healing magic besides that girl? Flop, no, I can't think of anyone else. Just a broken bar. Abel, just? Flop, I think you should try to say things in a way that makes them like you better. Village Chief Kun, even when you call them, things will go much more smoothly if you're conscious of being friendly. Abel raises one eyebrow in response to the cheerful protest from the front. The statement that Flop made was a dignified one, but to be honest, it was quite a harrowing statement to listen to from the side. Of course, Subaru didn't feel good about Rem being referred to in a way that divided her by her abilities. Abel, that feeling, with the disrespectful behavior of the siblings until just now, is not very convincing. Subaru, considering how far we've come, I have the right to say that Mika broken bar a broken bar. Then, does Flop-san have the same right? Abel, I don't know, but I'm curious to hear about the siblings' adventures. It was too turbulent a story to tell, but that was a topic for another time to delve into. Regardless of how Abel put it, Rem's safety was Subaru's top priority. Of course, he's seen with his own eyes that she has no noticeable injuries. Subaru, did she work too hard and collapse? Flop, don't worry about that, husband Kun. Of course, all that hard work has taken its toll on her, but that's nothing that can't be remedied with some rest. It's really wonderful that you've got such a hard-working wife. Subaru, I see a broken bar, then it's good. Patting his chest, Subaru was relieved to hear Flop's approval. The situation was what it was, and even though he had to rely on Rem, he was frankly afraid that she would try too hard. It didn't matter what Subaru said, Rem wouldn't listen to him if it was within her capabilities. Al, wife. Al murmured quietly beside Subaru, who patted his chest. He puts a hand to the chin of his steel helmet, twisting his head. Al, I didn't think I saw her above, but is the brother's daughter here too? Subaru, you mean my girl, Amelia? No, she's not here. How reassuring it would be to have her here. On the other hand, I don't think I want her to be here. Emilia's gentle nature and the Volca Empire's way of being are probably water and oil. Emilia, who thinks in a somewhat cerebral way, may be more in tune with the Imperial way of thinking, but the cruelty of the Empire goes even further. Emilia is not suited for the Empire. Al, a wife other than your daughter? Huh? Subaru, I'm telling you, we're passing it off as a matter of convenience. If I'm being honest, I've decided to take such good care of her. I'll bring her home, no matter what. Al, he explains this to Al, who mumbles slowly with his hand on his chin. As long as they were also in the Empire, it is impossible for strange rumors to spread from Al's mouth, but he didn't want him to get the wrong idea. He didn't want his resolve to be compromised. Priscilla, that gentleman, the one they call the merchant, Are you one of Abel's men? Flop, no, I'm not a subordinate. My sister and I are in a position to work with husband Kun and the village chief. Well, I guess it's appropriate to call him my newest friend. Priscilla, oh, a friend, huh? Huh? Priscilla, who had exchanged words with Flop, loosened her lips at his answer, hiding her loosened lips with her fan. Priscilla sent a meaningful look in Abel's direction. Priscilla, I didn't know you were making friends without my knowledge. It seems the throne of Emperor Volika is becoming much easier to vacate. Abel, don't be sarcastic. I don't remember being friends with that man. Flop, what are you talking about? Village Chief Khan, we've been through the line of death together in women's clothing. Abel, you're a friend if you've gone under the line of death together. If that's the case, then every single Imperial soldier is my friend, and the one who's been through the line of death closest to me is my enemy. The perfect rebuttal using his own position, which made Flop hold his tongue. However, it was like a double-edged sword that did not leave Abel unscathed either. Subaru. Anyway, Flop-san brought me some good news. I'd like to have more good news about the economy over here, too. Abel, wait. Subaru : What is it? It was a bright spot in a not-so-positive meeting, interrupting Subaru's attempt to spur him on. Abel cocked his chin at Flop. Subaru's gaze was guided by the movement, and he looked over at Flop. Subaru. Flop-san? Yes, he noticed the reason why Abel pointed at him, the change in his expression. Flop, who has always been cheerful, has always been like the sun, but what came to his eyes was a faint feeling of hesitation and sorrow. Abel, if you are a merchant, you should be careful about how you talk about things. In that respect, I don't think you're really suited to be a merchant. Flop, I've received quite a few of those opinions, so I have some thoughts on the matter, but I'll leave it at that for now. Husband Khan, there was a lack of words in what I said earlier. Subaru, as Abel points out. Flop looks at Subaru, his long eyelashes fluttering in melancholy, his well-groomed face, and the wistfulness in it, made his heart tighten. He could not help but think that he did not want to hear what he had to say, but he couldn't help but listen. In that sense, Flop had a natural talent for making others listen to what he had to say. If it were not for this situation, I would have praised him for his talent as a merchant. But Flop, it's not unrelated to the village chief, either. I want Miss Connor and Miss Holly to come with us. Now that he couldn't interrupt Flop, who told him so, it was as hateful as a cursed talent. A cubed, a one quarter, a cubed, a one quarter, a cubed, a one quarter, a cubed. Flop, Abel and Natsume are here too. After being called by Flop, Subaru and the others left the conference hall and went to the upper floor of the city hall, in the space where the wounded were gathered together, and it looked like a field hospital. The one who greeted Subaru and the others was My Zelda, who had cut off her scorched black hair. My Zelda was the most seriously injured, both in the initial overrun by the flames and in the final attack against Arikia. Her whole body was burned and swallowed by the tornado, and then her internal organs were ripped out by the blow of Arikia. No matter how strong her body was, it must have been a situation that tested My Zelda's vitality to see how far she could go against Trem's healing techniques, which were not at their best. My Zelda, I'm sorry to call you here. I just thought I needed to tell you as soon as possible. Subaru, My Zelda-san. My Zelda smiles thinly as she says this, sitting on an object near the wall. As one of the powerful Amaznesses, My Zelda's smile was devoid of the wild demeanor that she had shown Subaru and the others on numerous occasions. Nevertheless, she still had the power of expression in her eyes. That was the imbalance. My Zelda, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Rem, for saving my life. It's a miracle. Subaru, My Zelda, you took the city as well as the chieftain of Shadra. I admire your work. In addition, I must make a declaration for the future of this war, praising Rem's dedication and Subaru's contribution. My Zelda straightened up her residence, and then My Zelda, the position of Shadra chief will be given to my sister, Talitha. I can no longer fulfill my duties. She patted her right leg, which was missing from the knee down, and announced that she would take over the role.